Crowd sizes may be a trivial thing to most of us, but in politics, they're everything.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Which crowd is larger, the 2009 crowd or the 2017 crowd?
It looked like 1 million, 1.5 million people.
What is his obsession, by the way, with crowd size?
It's not just President Trump who's obsessed with crowd sizes. Politicians, activists, concert planners, fire departments, to name a few, have long gleaned a ton from crowd sizes.
That kind of thing has always been a fairly good proxy for public opinion.
Austin Choi Fitzpatrick is a researcher and professor exploring culture, technology, and social change at the University of San Diego and the University of Nottingham.
It's an important way of signaling to people with power that the people like or don't like a policy, don't like or don't like a particular product. There's a line out the door at an Apple store. It means people want to get in and buy something, right?
Even President-elect Joe Biden, for whom COVID-19 restrictions will limit the size of his inauguration, will probably also be hoping those crowd size estimates come in at minimum, the 1,000 people inauguration ceremony officials have allowed to gather for the event. So how are crowd sizes estimated anyway? For the longest time, crowd sizes have been calculated using something called the Jacobs method, named after Herbert Jacobs. Jacobs was a journalism professor at UC Berkeley in the 60s, at the height of the Vietnam War protest.
He looked out his window and he said, I wonder how many people are out there protesting on Sproul Plaza. And then he noticed that Sproul Plaza at the time, maybe still now, is poured in sort of squares. There's concrete squares. And he thought, I bet there's a sort of carrying capacity per square.
Here's what he did. He counted how many people were in a few squares. So in this made up example, there are 3 in this one, 6 in this one, 5 here, and 3 there. That's a total of 17 people. Then he divided that by 4 squares to get the average. That gives us an average of 4.25 people per square. Then Jacobs multiplied that number by how many squares were on the plaza total to get an estimate. Let's say there were 16 squares. 16 squares times an average of 4.25 people per square would give you an estimate of 68 people. This helped him establish the golden rules of crowd density still used today. A lightly crowded square has 1 person per 10 square feet, a densely crowded square has 1 person per 4.5 square feet, and a mosh pit-like square would have 1 person for every 2.5 square feet.
That has been the sort of tried and true method for if we know what the area of a space is and we know how densely, sort of packed folks are in a crowd. Is it a mosh pit? Is it a loose shuffle? Well, then we can reasonably estimate how many people are there.
If you were to do this on another event, like this protest in New York City, you'd grab a picture of the event, place a grid over it, and label the squares as loose, dense, or mosh. Let's say the area of each square here is 36 square feet. You'd multiply the area, 36 square feet, by the density you applied to that square. So D, or dense, is 1 person for every 4.5 square feet. You get 10.9 people. So you estimate there are 10.9 people in every square with the D. You do the same calculation for squares with M's and L's and add them all up. Now, that method has limitations. It usually relies on angled photos of an event. There's only so far the eye or camera can see, and qualifying a square as densely or loosely crowded is subjective. A government agency may be inclined to give lower estimates for a protest, while the advocacy group behind that protest may be inclined to overestimate. That's why researchers like Choi Fitzpatrick are exploring how drones could help make the Jacobs method more objective and accurate.
So what this allows us to do is to fly over a crowd, no, offset slightly over a crowd, because flying over a crowd is illegal and unsafe.
With the drone, you take a picture of the entire event.
Then get imagery that allows us to lay a grid over the image that we see. And then to do some fancy math in the background that says how many pixels or how many square feet on the ground.
And then you classify each square as very dense, dense, loose, very loose, or empty. You apply the golden rule of density we covered earlier. So if it's dense, you would multiply the area of the square by the density. Any squares with very loose density are counted by hand since the resolution of the image is pretty good. Then you add all the squares up. This is more tedious than the traditional Jacobs method, but it's also more accurate.
We actually ran lab experiments where we took our graduate students and we gave them all an image and we gave each of them a different colored pen. And we said, in each grid, mark off how many people you see in the grid. But they agreed that there were 12 people in this grid. And where there were differences of opinion, it was very, very marginal.
But of course, using drones to get more accurate estimates so that politicians can stop having arguments over how many people were at an event raises a logical next question.
I ask myself, should we do this? Should we fly a drone near a crowd? Police are flying drones near and over crowds. Police are using drones to follow people they suspect of committing crimes home. Do we want a world in which drones are able to do these things, whether it's crowd counting or it's activists surveilling the police or the police surveilling activists? Do we want to live in that world? I think that's a great question.
One more question, who should dole out these estimates? The National Park Service says not I. In 1995, the agency made the decision to stop estimating crowd sizes after it was threatened with a lawsuit by organizers of the Million Man March for estimating that the crowd was only 400,000 people large. Regardless of how crowd sizes are estimated or who makes those estimates, there's no reason to believe crowd sizes won't continue to matter in Washington and beyond. Now that you know how to calculate those crowd sizes, we can add more estimates to the mix. Hi everyone, Fernando Hurtado here. Thank you for checking out the NBCLX YouTube channel. For more videos, click here. And be sure to click the subscribe button right here and join the NBCLX community.